Hey everyone, welcome to the Friday, October 24th, 2025 episode of On Iowa Politics. It's the Think Pink edition. This week on the podcast, we're going to talk about the No King rally in Iowa, Rob Sand's 100th Town Hall, and Iowa's DOGE report. Hello everyone, I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see I'm wearing a lot of pink today, a pink tie on a pink shirt for those of you just listening in. It's not because like a good gaudy shirt and tie combo. It's because it's October and breast cancer awareness is a cause that's near and dear to me for far too many unfortunate reasons. So please make sure that all the women in your life are vigilant, doing self-examination, seeing their doctor regularly. Early prevention, you've heard this, saves lives. I know that to be a fact. And if you know a survivor, by the way, reach out to them, give them a hug. You all probably do know a survivor, but if you don't, let me know, and I can definitely point in the direction of someone worthy. All right, let's get to it. With me this week, our Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief, Tom Barton. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Erin.
Lead Des Moines Bureau Chief, Maya Marchel Hoff is with us. Hello, Maya.
Hello.
That was a tongue twister for me this week. Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal is here. Hello, Jared.
Erin, I'm delayed on this by a week, but apologies to your Brewers and down with the Dodgers.
Oof, man. That all happened so fast. Was that like yesterday or a week ago? My goodness. Did anybody get the license plate number on that bus? Gazette columnist Althea Cole is here. Hello, Althea.
Like Brewers fans, my Cyclones and I are suffering, but we'll see what happens tomorrow. Hello, Erin.
Yeah, there's at least a tomorrow for you guys. I'm on to the Bucks and Packers now. Gazette columnist Todd Dorman rounding out the squad. Hello, Todd.
Good afternoon, Erin.
All right, it's good to be back with our gang talking politics again. In case you missed it, last week we took a break from our regular reporter roundtable discussion format to bring you our first On Iowa Politics podcast interview episode with Iowa House Speaker Pat Grassley. If you haven't heard that yet, by the way, please do check it out. We think it was informative and interesting, well worth your time. Just before we logged on, all these guys were saying so many great things about that episode. And I said, guys, we got to get to the podcast. Too many more things. Thank you. You're all so right. But unanimous approval here from the team. All right. Seriously, let's get, but very much, we hope we check it out. Let's get to this week's news. This past weekend, the No Kings rallies were held across the country, including in Iowa, to protest President Donald Trump and his administration. Organizers said that more than 7 million people attended the more than 2,700 public protests across the country. And as I said, a number of them in Iowa. More than 1,000 attended the rally here at the Iowa Capitol in Des Moines. Our Jared McNett covered a rally out in Sioux City. Jared, describe the scene for us there in conservative-leaning Western Iowa.
Well, right off the top, with my overview, I'm going to get in trouble and give a rough number, which people love to argue with me about anytime I take a count at any public event. So there's at least 250 people. Some people pegged it at 400 or 500. So there's that out of the way. The rally actually started in South Sioux City, Nebraska. It went over the river and then to the Sioux City Public Museum. So the rally was about a 2-mile march. I'd say about 100 people did the full journey, and then there were a lot more people at the museum. If you're wondering, was there any conflict at all along the way? Were there any Antifa super soldiers burning any cars, or was there any kind of skirmish of any kind? No, there was not. There was a guy in a truck that was stopped who dropped an F-bomb at some rally goers. And then there was a woman on a sidewalk away from the route. I walked the whole route along with the rally goers, saying Mexico deports people too, and good job MFers. So that was really the only conflict that I saw in the 3+ hours I was covering the rally stuff. Some of the organizers included local ministers and faith leaders. So a couple times along the route, people stopped to pray. There were a number of people either draped in or waving American flags. As far as signs, it had plenty of No King signs, some nobody is illegal on stolen land signs, a couple of free the Epstein files signs, and then just all kinds of other, garden variety interests. In terms of people there, plenty of older folks, but there were teens and 20-somethings too, including one I talked to from South Sioux City who had a flag from the anime One Piece. It was his first protest, and he talked about the fact that both of his parents are immigrants, and they always told him to stay out of trouble and to stay low because they didn't want to get in trouble. But he said he couldn't stand that anymore. We also had some people in unicorn costumes, like inflatable ones, which is sort of the move that people in Portland in particular were doing with like the inflatable frog costumes. There was also someone in an Elmo costume, which is the photo that I ended up using for my main art for that story because it was too funny and fitting of 2025 not to use to have a picture of Elmo at a protest. And then, yeah, in terms of like pushback or anything online, there were plenty of, people on Facebook going after the rally goers, and the Woodbury County GOP Facebook said that the people on the rally that brought flags were lemmings who were told to act patriotic. Yeah, and I think that those are kind of the big takeaways. I guess I should add too, there were some local party folks there, which
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, which kind of maybe leads into the next part with Todd and Althea. But yeah, there were some local party folks there, including Caitlin Dre, the state senator from District 1, who of course won the special election back in August, and then some other people from the local Woodbury County party as well. So yeah, that was kind of the crux of it. Pretty laid back as far as the rally goes. It was definitely bigger than the last one they had.
Stole my next question. Well done, Jared.
Back in June or whenever it was. I can't remember when the last one
I think
was.
I'm pretty sure that's right. Yep.
So yeah, bigger crowd, pretty laid back, and not really any one person kind of dominating in terms of speeches or anything. It was pretty egalitarian, I would say, as far as that goes.
Okay. All right. Interesting. And by the way, I feel your pain on the crowd estimates. I've been through that. And also, I'm just terrible at that also personally. Like I hate trying to do that on my own. I always crowdsource those numbers with the reporters around me.
The reason I get so pissed about this is because I'm very OCD and I will sit there and count every last head that I can see.
So you feel pretty confident in your numbers.
That is stationary. And so when people come at me about it, I get very, very defensive.
Understood. Also, I would appreciate if you could come to every significant event that I cover in the future. I'll send you my schedule. All right, Todd and Althea, I want to bring you in on this. I've asked a version of this question, I think, on previous episode of the podcast, maybe back in June around the first ones. I don't remember, but I think it merits returning to anyways after this weekend's rallies, because the question I always ask myself as a political reporter is at times like this is whether these movements are going to translate to meaningful change in election results compared to previous cycles. So Todd, let me throw that to you first. To you, does this feel like a movement?
I would like to defer to the second half, if that's okay. No, go ahead.
Is that what the Hawkeye football team does?
Yeah, usually if you win the toss.
No, just does this feel like to you what you see? And I know it's a crystal ball question, so I'll admit that right off the bat. But does it feel to you that this is a movement that's going to contribute to making the 2026 election results look different than 2024 or 2022?
Well, I mean, there's quite a bit of preaching to the choir at a lot of these events. Right. I mean, the fact that people feel strongly enough to go out on a Saturday and protest probably says something. I mean, and people that are against the president or against what Republicans are doing, they really don't have much of an outlet for that frustration. They can't. Their party and their politicians that they like don't have any power to do anything for the most part. They can write a letter to the editor, which they do, or they can go to this protest and make a sign and at least feel like they maybe did something. I think what's going to change votes is going to be less the numbers at these protests and more the economic numbers that we're seeing. I mean, you've seen Donald Trump's once lofty sort of approval rating on the economy drop into the upper 30s. It's jacket weather, I think is what that is. But that I think that's going to be how the economy fares. Because there were a lot of people that voted for Donald Trump and said, well, we realize that he's sort of boorish and I wouldn't want him over to my house, but I'll vote for him because he's going to fix the economy because he's a businessman. So with cost of living not coming down as he promised, the tariff situation, the farm markets in Iowa and the manufacturing markets. I mean, there's just a lot of economic stuff. And if that influenced the protests, I don't know, but I think that's going to be what, hurts the president in the long run. But I will say they made fun of it pretty hard, which means that it must have bothered them a little. I mean, you don't just go out and send your aircraft out to dump effluent on your on the protesters if it doesn't bother you a little bit. I mean, it's sort of that was a new one. It was a new one. I've never seen a president do that. I hope I never will again.
Todd's referring to an animated GIF that the president retweeted for those of you listening who are not very online and wondering what Todd's talking about.
Yeah.
So TLDR though, Todd, it's still the economy, stupid. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
I think so. I mean, the movement's important. I mean, it's important for people to get mobilized. It's probably going to help voter registration and maybe some things like that require some organization, get people fired up and get them signed up. But I don't know that the protests themselves are going to make a lot of difference electorally.
Gotcha. Althea, curious what you think about all this. And then also I understand you've been hearing from some Gazette readers who were upset that our coverage of the Cedar Rapids and Lynn County area and Oak Kings rallies weren't on page 1A the next day. If just for the record, it was the entirety of page 2A. Before I send this to you, Althea, I'm just going to weigh in this far. And this is going to sound sarcastic, but I mean it genuinely, folks. At the very least, it's nice to hear that there are a few people left out there who still care about story placement in a printed edition of the newspaper. Like that.
Erin, A1 for the Sioux City Journal's coverage.
Man, throwing us right under the bus here on the podcast. Wow.
Well, also, Jared, it is 1A, not A1. It's not steak sauce.
Man.
That's an advertising opportunity we could maybe capitalize
true.
on.
There we go. Always interested in new revenue sources.
I think that's back on page Heinz 57.
Oh, boy.
I only say that because I made that mistake once, and an editor eviscerated me in the middle of the newsroom about it.
Oh, wow.
It's not A1. It's not steak sauce. It's 1A.
All right, let's get us back on track here. So Althea and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe you may also be writing about this in a column. So tell us a little bit about that, about the Gazette's coverage, and just any thoughts you have on this more broadly too.
Well, we have gotten a couple of letters to the editor, including one that printed in yesterday's edition, and we've got a few more uploaded. I haven't checked our budget for the weekend yet. We're recording this on Thursday. And thank goodness Jared was not in Cedar Rapids, because if he needed to count the crowd, some of the letters we got, one I'm looking at claimed 4,000 people, and one claimed 5,000 people.
Estimates varied, huh?
It's like, I don't know about that, but what we're really in trouble for is no coverage at all, apparently. And look, Erin, I read the same Gazette that you do. I saw the same page 2A that you did. And I saw the same pictures our photographer took in Mount Vernon. And I look, I mean, I don't want to make this a, did we or did we not screw up? Because I don't think we did. I think our coverage was very, very sufficient, specifically because I think it reflected the event overall, this was nationally a notable thing because these protests happened in cities across the country, including in Iowa, which according to the most recent electoral map, is still very, very red. But as far as the local event in Cedar Rapids, yes, I will be writing about it this weekend. And to me, the protest in downtown Cedar Rapids wasn't terribly notable for one particular reason. They already do this all the time. Now, what made it very, very, very different from any other time that they've done it, other than on June 14th, was the fact that, it was part of this nationwide thing. And because of that, a lot more people showed up. Was it actually 4,000? Was it actually 5,000? Well, I wasn't there to count them, and neither was Jared. So we may never actually know the true number of people. But it was a great lot of people. And what did they do? They did the same thing that they do twice a week in much smaller numbers. They waved signs. Now, look, the signs were very, very clever, but it kind of seems emblematic of the bigger problem with Democrats right now. What do we want? We want Trump gone. When do we want it? 10 years ago. How are we going to do it? We're going to wave signs and get mad and not come up with a terrific organizational plan as far as national elections go. And look, one thing I point out in my column this weekend is that the people who organized this has been on the calendar for a while. And they couldn't have known that it was going to fall on a weekend that was on the heels of some pretty good news in Trump land. You've got gas prices that are coming much, much lower. You've got hostages being released from Gaza, which, just in case it doesn't go without saying, that is a terrific thing. And it is an extremely notable achievement on the president's part. And you've also got reports of illegal immigration coming under control for 4 or 5 straight months now. We have absolutely zero people who cross the border without authorization to do so being released into the United States of America, which is a dramatic turnaround from the last 4 years. And this is what people voted for when they cast their vote for Donald Trump. Now, as far as going downtown for a couple of hours and waving signs, that's fun. It's a great lot of fun. And I, got some pictures of the signs off of social media. But when your action is waving signs, you're going to get a whole variety of stuff. There's one sign: "I want to live in a world where the flags are lowered for Jane Goodall." Okay, that was a professionally printed sign. I'm very impressed. And then this person was also holding a picture of, it looks like Trump advisor Stephen Miller with a little one of those little mustaches to indicate that he's, Hitler, because that's very popular in the Democratic Party right now. Everybody I don't like is Hitler. And then you've got MAGA, morons are governing America. You got a person dressed as a banana. This is bananas. That one I really like. That is very, very creative. And then some guy with a swastika on the shirt, with the big red circle and the slash. You still think swastikas look cool in the real Fourth Reich? You'll be the first to go. I don't know what that means. So I get that you want to open the pages of the Gazette and see all of the fun you had repeated back to you. I'm a Cyclone fan. I can't tell you how many times I would come home after a big, huge win, like in 2002 against Texas Tech, when Seneca Wallace had the run, and then look in the pages of the Gazette and not see exactly what I wanted to, looking back at me. But to each one's own, and we're a newspaper that covers quite a bit of subjects here. And ultimately, if you go into a newspaper, whether it be the Gazette or any of our other Iowa publications, and you go in there with a preconceived expectation of what you want it to say, you're probably going to be disappointed. But I think a lot of people had a lot of fun this weekend. Does fun translate into votes? Does fun translate into change at the local, state, or federal level? Personally, in my opinion, I think the Cedar Rapids one could have been a huge draw for even more people, and they could have done something much more interesting than standing there and waving signs. And that surprised me quite a bit.
All right. And just for those at home, and appreciate this to our all-world producer, Bailey Chehan, the 1A of the Gazette that day had a story on how states are jostling for part of the Rural Healthcare Fund, which is a story we've been reporting on and is a big deal to rural hospitals in Iowa and across the station. School board candidate story, local elections coming up, very important. We wanted to talk about those today, but run out of time, maybe next week. And then a feature story, which is driven by art, some photos taken of the return of a replica statue of the Statue of Liberty to Cedar Rapids after it was repaired from some vandalism. So that was your local news on 1A that pushed the No King rally coverage all the way to 2A. Real quick, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is one of those we should just kind of make some notes here before we shift away from national politics. Quick note: in the past 2 weeks, we got the latest congressional quarterly fundraising results, which cover July through September. Our reporting pulls together some of the highlights from those reports, including Ashley Hinson's fast start in her Senate campaign and early fundraising in all those U.S. House primaries we've got going on. If you haven't already, please be sure to check out our reporting on those. And also, since last we huddled here on the podcast, 2 federal candidates have ended their campaigns. Jackie Norris, a Democrat in the U.S. Senate campaign, and Rod Blum, a Republican in the campaign for Eastern Iowa's U.S. 2nd District. Jackie Norris, obviously involved with the Des Moines Public School Board and everything that's going on there, and she cited that very much as a reason for her ending her campaign. And again, Rod Blum in what is a very competitive Republican primary in that 2nd House district with former state lawmaker Joe Mitchell and Shannon, current state lawmaker Shannon Lundgren. So those 2 are out. We'll have more to say about those primaries as we move along in the season. Staying on the campaign trail, but taking things to the state level now. This week, Democratic gubernatorial candidate Rob Sand held the 100th town hall forum of his campaign. He held the milestone-breaking event in his hometown of Decorah. And on that day, he also talked to our Tom Barton. Tom, what were some of the things you took away from that interview on Rob Sand's milestone day?
Yeah. So here's a little bit about what Rob Sand had to say.
You know, certainly a reoccurring theme is just that people are very fed up. They're sick of the direction of things in Iowa, and they're looking around and they understand, they can feel that our economy is not doing well. Most folks know that we're #1 in cancer growth. I guess that doesn't surprise me. And your question at the end of the day is, what surprises me? I guess I've actually been pretty surprised at how many people are coming out that aren't members of my political party. Independents and Republicans, oftentimes it's 40% of the room. And we're getting good turnout, and we're getting questions from people who are interested in hearing from somebody that's doing something different, I think.
So what really stood out from talking with Rob Sand was how much his 100 town hall tour seemed to serve as both a campaign strategy and a listening session. So he's been to all 99 counties, and he says what he's hearing over and over from Iowans, regardless of party, is frustration with the state's direction, concerns about Iowa's economy and the cost of healthcare, and growing alarm about things like water quality and public education. At his final stop in Decorah, he spoke to a standing room only crowd of more than 340 people and framed his message around accountability and problem solving rather than partisanship. You know, we talked about reforms to Iowa's school choice program, strengthening early education, and improving oversight of private school spending. Water quality was another major theme. He said he's working with experts and scientists and farmers on a plan that he says he wants to be both impactful and achievable. He also shared stories from the road, including meeting a mother from Grimes who struggled to get care for her son, who suffers from severe seizures, struggling to get care for her son through Iowa's privatized Medicaid system, something he says motivates his push for greater transparency and oversight. And while Republicans have dismissed his tour as political theater, Sand is betting on a message that crosses party lines. He told me that he's met plenty of Republicans and independents who show up simply because they want someone focused on solving real problems and not, quote, what he says is another food fight between 2 private clubs. So the big takeaway is that Rob Sand is trying to position himself as kind of a pragmatic reformer, someone running to build things, not just fight about them. That's a recurring line of his during these town halls. Whether that message breaks through in a deeply red state is the question heading into 2026. But it's clear that he's trying to reach beyond the traditional Democratic base, and it's a message that does seem to resonate beyond party lines. So his call for what he describes as, quote, a better and truer Iowa, not just redder or bluer, has found an audience among voters disillusioned with both parties. At one of the stops in Waverly on Tuesday, for example, he shared how even longtime Republicans have responded positively to his tone. Among them was Robert Wyatt, 81-year-old veteran from rural Shell Rock, who said he came because he misses at a time when Republicans and Democrats had a common goal and differed only on means. Wyatt called Sand's message positive and solution-oriented, saying that he appreciated Sand's willingness to acknowledge Iowa's water quality problems and other long-term issues. He described himself as a old school Republican who is skeptical of school vouchers and recent tax shifts that he says take from the many and give to the few. And after hearing Sand in person, told me compared to what he's seen elsewhere, Rob Sand looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think you nailed it in there, Tom. And I've probably said something similar when I've talked about the town halls of his that I covered over the summer. Is that, I mean, it's clear that message is getting a favorable reception in some circles. Now, this is always the thing you remind yourself is it's being received well by the people who are going out to a Rob Sand rally on a weekday afternoon in the middle of October, right? How's that going to play among the larger voters? That's the big question we ask ourselves. But the scant evidence we have at this moment, it's been interesting to see, and like I said, now that'll continue to play out as the campaign goes on, and if he wins the primary as is fairly widely presumed, then we'll see how that plays in a general election, where he'll face a lot more challenges to that, a lot more pushback to that kind of messaging too.
This is very important that we pause for this. I saw that Rob Sand was having Mabe's Pizza, which if anyone goes to Decorah is A, some good stuff, and B, the move to get there is the chicken cordon bleu pizza. That's the one that you want to get. It's very delicious.
I'm going to make a self note of that, not even for myself, but my wife and daughter. That sounds like right up their alley. So I'm going to make a note of that.
Good specialty Thai.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Well, and I mean, he's from Decorah, so he should know the good pizza joint, right? So it's a good thing that he got that one right. All right. Moving on as we wind down here over to the official office side now. This week, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds held a press conference to announce the publication of the recommendations report from her DOGE Task Force on Government Efficiency. The task force, which was comprised of Iowans appointed by Reynolds, most of them business leaders and most of them Republican donors, presented a series of recommendations that Reynolds and state lawmakers will now consider going into the next legislative session, which starts in January. Maya, you covered that press conference for us. Give us some of the highlights.
Yeah, I'll channel the DOGE efficiency mindset to make this as efficient as possible.
There you go. Love it.
Can't guarantee
Love
that.
it.
So we've talked about this before on the podcast. So things I'm going to hit on, we've talked about a lot already. There have been there were 4 meetings over the course of 6 months, and the task force officially delivered their recommendations to Reynolds on the 29th of September. Some of the ones that stuck out of the 45 recommendations on the, I believe, 136-page report, it was very thorough. At least from the parts I've read, just a lot of words in terms of what I mean by thorough so far. One of the things that stuck out was potential changes to IPERS. Now, in the official recommendations, there aren't any suggested changes to IPERS, but, one that was brought up in a meeting earlier this summer that caught a lot of attention and controversy, and folks were concerned that IPERS was going to be changed. That is, public benefits for public employees, or the Iowa Public Employees Retirement System. It's a defined contribution system similar to to a 401k. And, folks, the chairman on the committee, Terry Lutz, on the return on taxpayer investment subcommittee, clarified that it was misrepresented and misunderstood. That out of the way, in the official recommendations, instead of making any changes now, it recommends commissioning a regular study on public compensation and benefits, similar to those conducted in the private sector. And the argument from the task force behind this is wanting to be able to make these government positions, public positions, more competitive with those of the private sector, to draw more folks into these positions and get, top talent into state government. So the study, which would compare public sector wages, pensions, healthcare, paid time off, and other benefits, like those offered by private employers, would also focus on Iowa's defined benefit pension system and whether the state should explore in the future offering current employees or future employees a, quote, strictly voluntary defined contribution plan. So just a little background: IPERS pays more than $2.6 billion in annual benefits, and its trust fund is roughly at $45 billion, which some analysts say is by far one of the healthiest in the nation. So based off of this study, then they would determine whether or not they maybe want to offer employees in the future a different type of package. But during the press conference on, oh gosh, it was Tuesday now at this point, Reynolds mentioned that there's kind of already a state subcommittee that does this, the Public Retirement Systems Joint Legislative Committee. They already kind of conduct similar studies, and they're meeting actually on December 9th. But she mentioned that, all things are kind of on the table, and they can look at, all of the recommendations holistically and maybe take those into consideration. Another thing was performance-based pay for teachers. So initially it was floated and along with kind of earlier this summer, like I mentioned with IPERS, it was floated during the task force to base teacher bonuses on student achievement to help improve test scores across the state, which have seen dips in a couple subjects in the last few years compared to national averages. But again, it was clarified that there would be no reduction in Iowa teacher pay in the official recommendations, and that was the case. So the finalized report actually recommends developing a merit-based teacher compensation system, which would include a bonus structure, teacher professional development, and incentives for those in high-need schools in order to improve student outcome. And then teachers could earn bonuses between 3 and 10% of their base salary. Again, kind of like IPERS, Reynolds said that the state is kind of already doing this in a way through the Teacher Accelerated Learning Grant, also known as TAL. It provides similar bonuses for teachers, but she said the recommendation would, takes the next step. And then there was some recommendations around shared government service delivery. So like one of the recommendations under that would allow cities with populations of over 50,000 to elect to become independent cities and have a choice to provide their own services that they currently receive, and just more focus on integrating local municipalities into more shared service models to make that more efficient. Of course, potentially tying that in, as Reynolds did during the press conference, to being able to lower property taxes by making these government functions more efficient and cutting taxpayer costs. To say that is a very high level explanation. Of course, it's a lot more complicated. And so, Reynolds, to kind of cap this off, Reynolds mentioned that her cabinet and her office are going to take a closer look at these recommendations in the next few months, leading up to her last legislative session as governor. So we can maybe expect to see, depending on what her office takes away from this, whether or not she'll craft legislation based off of these recommendations. And then Representative Hans Wills, he was an ex officio member on the task force. He also came out with a statement when the recommendation was released that, lawmakers will need to take some time to look at these as well and see if they want to kind of have at any of the recommendations as well. So it really, the next steps are in the governor's and the legislature's hands at this point.
Yeah, it'll obviously be interesting come January what we start seeing A, in the governor's legislative agenda, and B, whether the lawmakers pick up on any of these proposals, on how many of them. Obviously something we'll be monitoring. We got a few minutes to play with here before my Zoom room turns back into a pumpkin. I wanted to go back to the Rob Sand event and pick Althea and Todd's brain real quick on that gubernatorial race, and anybody else who wants to chime in our last few minutes. And we've talked a little bit about this. I'm curious to hear you guys' perspective on how, as I talked about, eventually this will be if he is the general election candidate, how that's going to play in Iowa. He's going to face criticism from his Republican opponent, who's going to challenge the notion that Rob Sand is truly the moderate politician that he claims to be, and they'll try to paint him as a liberal Democrat. He's going to face that. I'm just curious, Todd and or Althea, you guys' 14 months out view on preview on how that debate is gonna take shape in this gubernatorial election.
I think one interesting aspect of it is that he went out and did 100 town hall meetings, and basically because of the uncertainty still surrounding the Republican field, he did that without Republicans laying a glove on him or trying to define him in any way different, which I think means that he's starting out with an advantage that Democratic candidates haven't had in the past, and the money is obviously helpful for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's definitely already out of the blocks, while the Republican candidates are and they're campaigning too. In fact, if you watch Iowa Press, they've been on that series the last few weeks, and we see them out there. But that's a good point about the head start. Going once, going twice on the gubernatorial election. Otherwise, we can wrap her up. But that'll do it for this week's episode of On Iowa Politics. If you're not already, subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or on YouTube, where you should also smash that like button. You can also find the podcast each and every week on your preferred Gazette or lead newspaper website. And now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you're also subscribed to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mesa City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. For Tom Barton, Maya Marchel, Hoff, Jared McNett, Althea Cole, Todd Dorman, and our producer Bailey Sheehan, I'm Erin Murphy. We'll be back again next week. Until then, be well, everyone, and be good.